Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Bite Size Podcast. I'm your host Clayton at ClaytesAFC on Twitter, and today we're joined by a very special guest to preview the game against Southampton on the weekend. It's Matt Samuel, the season ticket holder from Southampton, who is the Planet FPL Southampton correspondent. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are we?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. It's a special one because you're actually the first guest we've had on this season that's not an Arsenal fan. So yeah, we're looking to get more guests on from the opposition to give us some insight into their teams, because I'm sure as it will come up today, like I think when you get people that make general conclusions about your own team, it can be quite frustrating when you obviously watch 90 minutes week in, week out. And yeah, there tends to be a little bit of narrative that forms that isn't always accurate. But it's obviously been a tough start to the season for Southampton. But before we kind of get into that, I just want to rewind and talk about last year, because I think in the tough start this season, it's obviously kind of been swept under the carpet quite quickly how good last season was. And it was a tough start for you last season. So how was your experience last year in the Championship and then inevitably winning the playoff final?
I wish we were back there, to be honest. Um, it was great fun. I mean, I was at the Sheffield Wednesday opener. Me and my mate went along there. Obviously, got a last minute equaliser with Che Adams, and then like you said, it was a bit of a ropey start. Then we went on I think it was 25 game unbeaten run. That was obviously great fun. We were scoring lots of goals at home. We'd still concede, which is a common problem with Saints, but yeah, we kind of all noticed, automatics were a bit out of the equation. And as soon as we kind of got to that run with Leeds, West Brom, it was a case of, right, we need to get into the playoffs. And we need to make sure then we win the playoffs. So, yeah, I think it was a case of, I don't think we conceded. Obviously, we had West Brom at home, which is probably the best atmosphere I've ever experienced at St Mary's in my life. Obviously, we had the flares and all that, and that's not Southampton. We're very much a quiet family club. So you'd have, I think it was about 4,500 people turned up early to see the bus in. So that was a great night. And then Wembley, unbelievable.
Were you there at Wembley?
Yeah, went along with my old man, and we've got the season ticket together. So obviously to experience that with him was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, obviously it was a touchy affair, but when Armstrong scored that goal, everybody went wild. And yeah, it was great celebrations afterwards.
Yeah, I was watching that game, and I think that was in the first half he scored, right? And it finished 1-0, I think.
Second half.
Oh, was it second half? Yeah, vague memories of it, but I just remember the limbs. Like it was absolute carnage watching that.
Yeah.
And well-deserved win in the end. But like what you said there was interesting, because it was a slow start last season, and then I must be honest, I actually forgot about that kind of 25 game run. But after the start, what were your kind of expectations last season? Like, when was promotion still in your mind, or were you thinking it may not happen this season?
Yeah, I think it was always still there. It was more a case of, oh, well, Ipswich will drop off eventually. And I think that was the common phrase around most of the people in the Championship, and they just didn't. I think it was obvious Leicester were going to be, probably run away, and obviously they gave us 2 tonkings. So last season, that they just seemed to get the better of our formation and our style of play constantly. So I think it became quite clear maybe after Christmas that the playoffs were probably going to be the way to go. From then it was more of a case of, right, well, we've got to make sure we get there. I didn't think there was much doubt that would happen. It was just a case of, when we get there, can we go that step further? Because we've had so many times previously, whether it be in the Championship, or whatnot, then we haven't gone up, or we've lost to the semi-final. And Saints are used to kind of getting to that point. I think 76 was obviously the last trophy that we won outside of getting promotion. It's a case of, can we do it? And the belief probably wasn't really there until that home game in West Brom, and then going to Wembley. Yeah, completely different story. And I think everybody was well up for it, which was good to see.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then bringing that again, before we get into kind of what's happened so far this season, look, bringing the timeline from winning the playoffs, going into the summer, I think I remember seeing a couple of tweets from you in the summer being quite happy with the transfer window. I know Ramsdale in particular, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on, you were kind of happy with. But what was the mood like in the summer with the transfer window and going into the season, in terms of like expectations for the season?
So we knew that we couldn't spend shitloads, because It was a case of the season before, when in the January we signed the likes of Sulemana Onuachu, spent big money and still got relegated. So that was obviously a hit to the club, and it was a case of, right, okay, well, as fans, we're conscious of the fact that we probably don't have 100 million, for instance, but also at the same time we didn't want to go into it with the mistakes we did the previous summer, where we just signed youth, and it was more up and coming that clearly weren't ready. So as soon as you see the likes of Lallana, Charlie Taylor, kind of coming in just as probably those kind of key figures in the dressing room that can push some of the younger talent forward, and then obviously to keep the likes of Walker Peters, which we can come on to, was great, albeit doesn't seem to be in the mix at the moment. The biggest signing being obviously before Ramsdale was Flynn Downs, because he
Yeah.
was pivotal last season to the way we played. And I think Martin made it very, very clear that he was the one signing that he wanted to go over the line this summer.
Yeah, and this is where it's interesting because the noises I was picking up from the outside were quite positive. Like you say, that you knew you didn't have like a lump sum of cash that you could go and use, but I think you got a manager who really believes in his philosophy. You obviously got promoted by winning the playoffs, and yeah, I think there was some smart business that was done. So, when you saw the fixture list, how did you perceive the start of the season, and how has it gone in comparison to that?
Tricky, with some opportunities that we should have been taking. So obviously Ipswich at home, big fixture, get a draw, which is incredibly frustrating, last minute. Bournemouth away, yeah, I know it's always going to be tricky for us, because for us it's not a derby, but we always have a good game against Bournemouth. But we know that they're probably 3 or 4 years ahead of where we want to be now in terms of their cementing their status in the Premier League. So it was never going to be easy, but I didn't expect that first half against them. But the other fixtures, yeah, I think relatively they've been tough. Away at Newcastle is obviously a tough game,
I
and
thought you were all over them before,
well,
even before the red card, to be honest.
exactly. And then Man United at home again. There's a common theme here where for the first half an hour of a game, we play really well, and then as soon as something goes against us, whether it be the penalty at United, obviously the sending off for them up at Newcastle, or even this Bournemouth game, just conceding that stupid goal from a quick free kick, heads drop, and that is a reoccurring theme and a dangerous theme so far this season.
Is it something that you saw at all last year, or is that a bit of a new thing?
Sometimes, yeah, I think we had the talent last season to overcome it, and obviously the opposition, you could get at them. Whereas this season, we all know Premier League, you get mistakes punished. Whereas you could commonly go, and give away 4 or 5 chances in the Championship, and they may not go in. Here, you give away 1 or 2, and you could be 2-0 down in 10 minutes. So yeah, that's probably the biggest uplift, I think, in the way that the squad has to really react, and that's become obviously notably tricky this season.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, I'm paraphrasing here, but Arteta did his presser today, and he was full of praise for Russell Martin and the way Southampton tried to play. But what he said was similar to you in terms of like some of the games have been a lot closer on the data than I think the results suggest. He
Yeah.
didn't cite any specific examples, but just putting 2 and 2 together with what you said there, the Newcastle game, the Ipswich one with the last minute equaliser. And yeah, I think one thing that I want to kind of ask about on the back of what you just said there about like when first goal goes in, heads drop and everything. Like some Arsenal fans may not have seen this, but Russell Martin obviously gave quite a fiery post-match interview after the Bournemouth game, and I'm glad you said that it's
Yeah.
not a rivalry and a derby for Southampton, because I didn't know that. I kind of talk about narratives and stuff earlier on in the pod. I've always just made the assumption that that's quite a big derby. But yeah, Russell Martin after the game was obviously quite bullish in his presser, and it probably comes on to predicted lineups, whether we'll see changes and anything. But what did you read into his post-match interview, and how do you feel about him as the Southampton manager before we get into your predicted team for Saturday?
He's clearly an emotional guy, and I think he almost thrives on that. He comes across really almost charming to an extent. He seems to obviously get on really well with the players. You see that kind of on the videos that Saints post on social media, etc. and he's always protected them to an extent until Monday. Monday was the first time that I've ever seen him publicly really call them out and say, look, that isn't my team. And I think we could all see that, it wasn't. They had no idea what they were doing. But to an extent, I also blame Martin for that because of the way that he set up. So you can see on screen kind of what the likes of SofaScore and BBC, etc., have got it down as. But it actually was more of a 4-4-2 without a striker. So it was more, you kind of had Dibbling and Fernandez playing ahead of the other four, which was so strange because obviously Dibbling has thrived on the right wing.
Were they more like double tens then in the way that Arsenal used Trossard and Havertz sometimes?
Yeah, it was effectively a double 10. And then obviously Bournemouth took them about 10 minutes to realise that. As soon as they did, they stepped about 40, 45 yards up the pitch. And then suddenly you've got Dibbling and Fernandez playing with their backs to goal, 60, 70 yards, from the goal line. And they're not playmakers. They're not kind of, the types that can hold up a ball and Fraser and Cornet to get round the back of you. So I don't know why we didn't change it. But yeah, that was the way we kind of set up. Whereas the 4-2-3-1, I think, is probably our best formation. But yeah, for once again, we went without a striker, which 3 games into the season, you saw that we tried that, failed miserably, decided to bring Archer in, even Stewart. And then, yeah, to go back to this seemed very strange.
If you had to have a guess on why you think he did it again, knowing that it didn't work previously, why do you reckon he's opted for it on Monday?
Probably just to deal with Bournemouth's strengths in terms of, their press and, their pace. I think that was potentially an issue that he thought about, but I think he just overcomplicated it. Whereas had we gone with a tried and tested, at least would have an out ball. And then, ideally you'd like to then see Dibbling on the right. He could get down the lines. You probably would have had, Cornet, maybe Fraser on the left. But yeah, there was a few performances in there that you've gone, not sure you're really up to it at the moment. And maybe some of the players that we've been dropping should be coming back in.
Yeah, fair play. And it was interesting. He made 3 changes at half time and kind of married that up with his post-match presser. Do you think it's as simple as the 3 that went off might not be in the team against Arsenal? Can you give us some insight into what you think your predicted team would be against Arsenal tomorrow? And even if you can give us some insight into, again, I talk about narratives, like how Southampton play, like just forgetting the outcomes of the games in terms of your style identity. I think there's definitely one there. And like one of the narratives, I'd love to get your opinion on this, is some people would say it's quite similar to Company with Burnley, where may not have the personnel to implement the style he's trying. But again, I want to get your opinion as a fan that actually watches his club every week.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because, Martin is very much a stylistic manager and he knows his philosophy. He doesn't often chop and change. He did obviously last season, which was to our benefit to get promotion, but it was felt that that was only done to ensure that we could kind of be really solid at the back with the knowledge that we could, grab a goal the other end. So we've had 3 formations so far this season, which is incredibly frustrating. Kind of we had the 5-3-2 to start with, and then we kind of did obviously the 4-2-3-1, but then to see that 4-4-2 the other day without really having a striker was odd. But yeah, I do think the 4-2-3-1 is probably our best formation. Particularly, I'd prefer to see, say, obviously we can see on screen, rather than Ugachukwu, who I was excited by the prospect of us getting him on loan for 12 months, but he looked like he didn't care on Monday, which, for a loan player is very surprising, given you'd think that he'd want to impress to then either get in the Chelsea squad when he goes back or, for someone else to purchase him. But I think Lallana is probably the best player we can have in there. It's just whether he's got the fitness to do it week in, week out. And if not, someone like Joe Aribo can kind of cover there. But Flynn Downs will be the constant, kind of is that number 6.
Sure. And so with all of that in mind, what would you say you think the actual 11 will be, and what would you say are the main areas that you think Southampton would look to try and exploit Arsenal in tomorrow?
I don't think we can exploit you, to be honest. I am not hopeful, but honestly, what I'd like to see and what Martin will do may well be very different. But I personally think we should be bringing Carl Walker-Peters back into the squad. I've no idea why. It could be to do with the fact that he's not willing to sign a contract. But Martin came out saying that wasn't the case. And given we've got him and we've kept hold of him in the summer, it seems mad not to utilise him. He's clearly our best right back at the club. So Sugawara has played every game so far, but I don't think he was great on Monday. So it might be a chance to bring Walker-Peters in ahead of Sugawara, and at least that will give him the impetus to say, look, you are droppable. Whereas at the moment it's been Taylor and Walker-Peters rotating at left back, which Walker-Peters isn't a left back. He can cover there, but he's naturally right-footed. So I'd prefer to see the back four being Taylor, Bednarak, Harwood-Bellis, and Walker-Peters. Kind of moving forward, I think, ideally I'd like to see Downs and Lallana in there. Downs is solid, and Lallana is obviously so experienced. He knows the league inside out.
Very press resistant as well, right? Like really good technical ball playing.
He's unbelievable, and not just that, but he's a real leader, which is what this squad lacks. And when he does play, you can see him talking to all the players around him, directing, etc. And that's kind of what he's been brought in for. Plus, that will also lead on to probably him having a role with our under-21s. But ideally, I'd like to see, is that as the kind of the double pivot in front of the four. And then probably Matty Fernandez is kind of that 10, because I think he's been great. Dibbling on the right. Left wing, I'm not sure. It might be a chance to give out Adam Armstrong a potential run again, because I really haven't been impressed with Brereton Diaz since he's come in.
A lot of Southampton fans saying that, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the clinical Diaz that, had his chances at Sheffield United, for instance. Yeah, 7 million isn't a lot to spend, but for us it's quite a bit. But we seem to have a lot of options there. So obviously we've got him, Fraser, Adam Armstrong. It might be a case that Armstrong, comes in at left back for his pace, but he's also exceptional at backtracking. He will sprint 50 yards back to make a challenge. So that could obviously be key against you guys.
Sure.
And he will obviously be on the side with Saka if he was to play, left mid. And if Charlie Taylor was left back, I'd like to see us double up there. And then, I'd like to see Ross Stewart start. Just because we've slowly been integrating him and we haven't seen the Stewart of old from Sunderland, for instance. And I don't think he's ever been the same player.
I think he came on Monday, didn't he?
Yeah, so we haven't really seen what he could be since his Achilles injury. And then obviously we brought him. He played like 1 or 2 games, got injured, basically was out for the entire season. And he's been slowly reintegrated. So, he had 45 minutes at Bournemouth. He had half an hour against Man United, about the same against Ipswich. I think it might be a chance for us to play him because he's a natural number 9. And we've got a few of them. So we've got obviously himself, Archer, Onuachu. Sounds like he trains well, but I don't think he'll ever really get a game. So, I'd like to see Stewart start.
Fair play. No, thanks for that. It's a good insight. I think especially what you said about Armstrong on the left, I hadn't really considered that, especially like we see a lot of teams do tend to double up on Saka on that side. So, that's something that makes a lot of sense, which I hadn't really considered, to be honest. So, thanks for that. Before kind of move on to the Arsenal team news and stuff, just Penny, for your thoughts on Ramsdale so far. I know you were happy with him in the summer. How's he actually got on now after a few games?
I feel sorry for the guy. I mean, the fact that we've potentially spent 25 million on him was a huge surprise because we don't do that, let alone for a goalkeeper. But he does seem to fit right in, albeit we've maybe adapted a little bit because obviously we're so used to kind of playing out from the back, whereas he's clearly been given license if he needs to just go long, which I think suits him. But he's also, as you guys very much know, he's a real lively character. But he's also a very good shot stopper, which I hadn't appreciated. So some of the games, against Bournemouth or United, we could have been 4 or 5 down. And he's made some very good saves. A little bit concerned maybe about his ability from, say, free kicks and corners. That's a little bit of a worry, but I don't think the defence have really helped him at all there anyway because they've switched off. But as far as what we've got, he's a huge upgrade on McCarthy, for instance.
Yeah, no, and it definitely sounds like he's obviously the results have been tough, but in terms of the environment and the manager buy-in and the supporters, it sounds like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He's a lively character, so I think he needs to go somewhere where he feels wanted and like he can call the place home. So yeah, it feels like a really good fit from that perspective. I'll just move it on to Arsenal before we give score predictions and talk a little bit about the game and what Southampton have coming up after Arsenal. But we do these little nerdy graphics where I keep an eye on the score predictions for the season. So as you can see, Nima's not obviously with us today, but Nima's predicted us to win all 6 games. He's predicted us to score 18 goals and concede 1 this season. So you get the gist of usually what Nima's predictions are like. They tend to be 3-0. Yeah, the actual results are Arsenal have obviously won 4 games so far this season, 2 draws in there. We've scored 12 and conceded 5. I've got Nima's prediction. I've got mine, but I'll go to you first if you don't mind. I know you said when I asked you what threats on Southampton we should be looking out for, you said you weren't too sure you'd be able to exploit Arsenal. What is the mood like as a Saints fan going into the game, and what do you think the
There,
score may
there,
be?
there couldn't be a worse place to go at the moment, to be honest. Yeah, I think, yeah, we're not expected to get anything, so effectively, it's a free ticket, kind of to maybe try a couple of things or at least get some confidence back, maybe. But obviously, following on from that Bournemouth game, it's not really where you want to go. So yeah, I'm honestly expecting quite comfortable for you guys, to the point where maybe 60, 65 minutes in, you're 3-0 up, and then we one look to maybe try and shut up shop, and you start to rest a few. So yeah, that would be my prediction: 3-0, but really comfortable.
Sure. And yeah, for what it's worth, Nima's got the same, and I'm gonna be a bastard here. I do think it may be one where Arsenal are potentially like very efficient. I don't think we'll absolutely carve you open like minute after minute that some people outside are saying, but I do think last week against Leicester it was very impressive what Arsenal were
Yeah.
creating, and then it was 2 kind of freak moments that changed the state of the game. But I've got 5-0 in this one, and obviously I hope I'm wrong for the sense of like I like you, but from Arsenal's perspective, I think it's something that we need to do in terms of like thinking of goal difference and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think it will be similar to what you say. I think 3-0 maybe in a certain period, and then potentially rest a few people. I did actually skip past the Arsenal section, which I said I'd do. So in terms of team news from Arsenal, it was the same 11 that played against PSG midweek that started against Leicester. The obvious kind of team news issue is Timber went off at half-time against PSG, and on the night, Arteta said he felt something, and given his injury history last season and his load this year, they didn't want to take a risk. As a result, Jacob Kiwior came on and then played at left back, and Calafiori went to right back, which he's never played before. In terms of substitutions, Partey went off. Forgot what minute. I'll try to get it up in front of me. But Marino came on for his debut. But I still think Partey will start this game, and Marino will maybe look to be integrated properly after the international break. So Partey did go off after the 64th minute, and then on the 74th minute, Trossard went off for Jesus. And in the final minute, nothing to write home about. But there was a really nice nice video doing the rounds. I don't know if you've seen it. Miles Lewis Skelly's mum was at the game.
Yeah,
And
I saw that online.
yeah, he came on in the 92nd minute for Saka. So that was a nice moment. But
Yeah.
team news-wise, and my predicted 11, I think Partey will start again. I think Marino will be integrated in after the international break. Sterling didn't come on at all, which I found a little bit odd. I've had an inkling that he may make that left wing spot his own, but I think Martinelli's doing well at the minute. And yeah, Tuslav is in the chat saying I think we should start Sterling for this game to further boost his confidence. But I just think Arteta's not that kind of person. I think he'll just go for the same team unless enforced. And what I read on Jurien Timber, so Arteta did say White and Timber are in contention. Tomiyasu has been training, but I think is slightly behind the others. He did say White was in contention last week, and he wasn't in the squad for either the Leicester or the PSG game. So I don't read into that he'll suddenly be available to start. Timber's not in the Dutch national team for the international break coming up, and I've read into that maybe. Like, I mean, Arteta is very much a poker player in press conferences, right? So it's like, good luck trying to get a read on that.
Yeah.
But I did read into that. If he's not in the Dutch squad, I'm not so sure, which has made me think I think Calafiori will go right back and Kiwior left back. And on that, like I know you laughed when I asked you about potential areas for Southampton to exploit, but I do think if you do get the ball in wide areas, like Kiwior is a functional left back, but he's not very good at 1v1, like really good wingers. He can get isolated and
Goes well for dribbling.
yeah, exactly. And Dibling's obviously a fantastic talent. And Calafiori is a bit of an unusual profile from the left. Like he's very marauding Italian stallion, just goes wherever he wants. But from right back, like he did look. I mean, he's never played there before. His angles were a bit off against PSG. So again, I think in wide areas there is somewhere you could get some joy against Arsenal tomorrow. To be fair, so yeah, my predicted 11 is Raya, Calafiori, Saliba, Gabriel, Kiwior, Saka, Partey, Rice, Martinelli, and I think Havertz and Trossard. We haven't got any questions in the chat, so I'll just ask one question before we get out of here. In terms of the season coming up, it's obviously, yeah, like you said, tough game tomorrow, but then you have got Leicester at home, and then it's City away. But ignoring that, Leicester at home, Everton at home, your next two home games, are they ones that the fans are looking at as like, yeah, they are 6-pointers, or is it
must win?
Yeah.
Even at this stage, we need to get points from those games because we're then going to run out of those home ties against the guys around us that we need to be picking up these points, and to obviously only have one at this stage is a concern. If you go another 3 or 4 games and we've only got 2 or 3, it's not great. So yeah, we definitely need to maybe stamp our authority a bit more at St. Mary's particularly.
Yeah, and I think this is one where it sometimes depends on when you play teams, right? Because again, I'd watched bits of that Newcastle game, which started when you started the season. I thought, Jesus Christ, you guys look fantastic. And I do think if it hadn't happened the way it's gone, where it's 6 games winless, that like mentally you're maybe in a different space. And like I think a lot of the comments from Martin after the game reflected maybe how the players are feeling as well. I do think if you played like it, from what I've seen of Leicester, if that was match week 1, I would back Southampton at home against Leicester. I think 8 times out of 10, to be honest. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Is relegation something that's concerning you, or are you not thinking about it yet? Like, what can I ask? What your expectations are for the rest of the season from here?
So, I mean, survival has to be the number one priority because I think it'll kill us if we go down, given the money we've spent again. Plus, some of the players that have stuck around are the ones that we've signed, for instance. Will Ramsdale, Downs, will they really want to be, playing back in the Championship? I expect we'll look to maybe just make our money back on those guys, and then we're left with very little. So yeah, we have to survive. I think we're in a better position than we were 2 seasons ago in terms of squad depth and manager. But even then, it might not be enough. That's the worry.
Yeah, and I know before we went live, you actually told me a little bit about, was it your board member or something? What was that you?
Dragon Solak. So it's been reported in the Athletic, and it's kind of been leaked that he's not particularly, obviously, rightly not pleased with the start and is questioning Russell Martin. There's a few others on the board that are obviously still backing, but Solak's a real top investor for the club. So if he's starting to make noise and it's obviously getting out there, that's a worry. So yeah, as much as I really like Martin, I think he's great for the club. But I mean, if we're another 4 or 5 games down the line and we've only got 3 points on the board, for instance, it could well be that he has the authority to say, right, enough's enough, get someone else. But whether that would be right for this squad, I really don't know.
Yeah, no, fair play. But no, I hope. Yeah, I've always. I mean, it's going to be weird what I say here, considering you guys contributed to us not winning the title a couple of years ago. But I have had a soft spot for Southampton, and I think historically you were a bit of a bogey team for Arsenal as well. To be fair, I remember
we've had some good results. I always remember the Boxing Day at St Mary's. We beat you 4-0, which was so unexpected.
Who was the right back that scored that banger?
Oh,
I may have that wrong.
Yeah, no, and it swerved, from kind of outside of the left post back, and I can't remember his name for the life of me. But yeah, no, I was there. Yeah, it was great. I think
Martina.
that was it. Yeah, Cuco Martina. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably the only goal he's ever scored for us, but it was unbelievable. And I think Shane Long scored that day as well. Yeah, that was obviously fantastic. But generally, there was quite a funny graphic actually going around on Twitter, and it was the kind of previous loss ratios of managers like Hasenhüttl and previous, and it was like lose, 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 draw, and then I had Arsenal, it was win
Oh yeah.
for both of it, and it's like, could that happen this weekend? But I very much doubt it.
Yeah, no, you were definitely a bogey team for us. But like, yeah, I think the reason I've had a soft spot for Southampton is some of the teams you've had, like under Lambert and yeah, some Hassan who talk like they were just really good teams to watch. And like obviously the Barclaysman trend was going around a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if they qualify, but like some of the teams with like Mane, Graziano and Pele in there, Schneiderlin, like I just think that some Southampton teams over the past decade have just been unbelievable to watch. And I've never actually been to the ground, so I'm hoping when we play you later on in the season, I'll get a ticket this year.
Yeah, you should do.
I've got one final question before we get out of here, and I promise
Yep.
you do not need to be pressurized, given it's an Arsenal podcast. Genuinely want your honest opinion. Who do you think will win the title this year?
I predicted you guys.
Really? Was that in the summer, was it?
Yeah.
Still feel the same?
Yep.
Interesting. Why is that out of interest?
I just think squad-wise, you've probably got better players, particularly defensively. And I think that could have a huge marker on the season. If you guys can go 4 or 5 games, clean sheet after clean sheet, City always tend to slip up, at least conceding the odd stupid goal. But I think one injury, Haaland, for instance, if he gets injured, who have they actually got to replace him? Whereas at least you guys have proven you've got depth there, with the likes of Trossard, Jesus. So yeah, I still think it will go to the wire, but I'd actually like to see Arsenal win it.
Fair play. Well, with that in mind, I guess I'll have to shout you out and let all the Arsenal fans let them know where they can find you on Twitter because yeah, Matt's predicted Arsenal to win the league, so go show him some love. And what's your Twitter account? Is it at
It's
CS_wipeout?
Yep, CS_wipeout.
So yeah, go follow Matt on Twitter and give him some love. No, thanks a lot for this, mate. It's
No problem.
yeah, Arsenal can potentially make a bit of history tomorrow. Actually, if they win, they become the second team behind Man United to get 400 Premier League home wins. So I don't know if that's something Arteta will be aware of, but I saw that in one of the match previews I was reading, which I thought was quite cool. But hopefully it's not the Southampton of old. That is a bogey team, and bloody Theo Walcott contributing to us costing the title 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But no, I wish you all the best for tomorrow and for the rest of the season. I do hope it picks up because I can imagine it's brutal at the minute. But yeah, I think people are quick to jump on the whole like, what's the points total going to be? But like football changes very quickly. But appreciate you jumping on. It was great to get your insight and wish you the best for the rest of the season.
Cheers, guys.
Nice one. And for everyone else, we'll be back. Nima and I are going to review the game on Sunday, time TBC. It will either be morning, afternoon, or evening. Very Michael Owen comment that. Yeah, we'll let you all know. But yeah, on to tomorrow and then see you Sunday. Cheers, everyone. Cheers, Matt. Up the Arsenal.